There were three main factors that turned things around for the Eagles offense in their matchup against the Bills. For the second week in a row, the Eagles offense was dismal to start the first half. And for the second week in a row, the Eagles battled back from a 10-point deficit at half to beat two top 5 quarterbacks. In the first half against the Bills, Philly's offense gained 1 yard or less on half of their first down plays. Only 2 of their 8 second down plays were with less than 9 yards to go, and only once out of their 5 third downs they faced did they have less than 5 yards to go. The Eagles were behind the sticks for most of the first half, and that made their offense predictable and easier to defend. In the second half, things changed, and it really changed after their first drive when Jalen took a sack on first down to again put the Eagles behind the sticks. The next 3 drives resulted in touchdowns. On those drives, only 29% of their first down plays went for 1 yard or less, and 5 of their 6 second down plays were with less than 9 yards to go. That's a big contrast to the first half. As a result, 2 of their 3 third downs they faced were with less than 5 yards to go. They were able to stay ahead of the sticks, which kept the defense guessing and allowed them to be creative with their play calling. So what was the difference? In the first half, not including scrambles, the Eagles ran the ball on only 40% of their plays. On the 3 straight scoring drives, they ran the ball on 65% of their plays. In the first half, the Eagles called a running play or an RPO on 8 first downs compared to 5 passes, so it's not like they didn't try to run at all. But on the 3 scoring drives, they ran the ball on 8 first downs. We also saw a big change on second down as well. In the first half, the Eagles only ran the ball on 2 of their 8 second downs, while they ran the ball on 3 of their 6 second downs on the 3 second half touchdown drives. The first factor to turning the Eagles' offense around was their commitment to running the ball. But just deciding to run the ball more isn't the only reason they were able to dig themselves out of their hole. The run calls they used changed as well. We'll start with the RPOs. The Eagles use a lot of RPOs, and as a result, they may be intending to run the ball, but ultimately end up throwing based on how the defense plays out. According to Sports Info Solutions, the Eagles came into Week 12 with the second highest rate of passes when RPOs are called. They can get a little pass happy when calling RPOs. Part of that is based on what the defense presents to offense, but part of that decision is also on Jalen. Let's use these 2 plays from the first half as an example. The Eagles are running one of the Miami Dolphins' favorite plays, the seam rail slide RPO. The first play, Jalen makes a good decision to pull the ball and throw as the conflict defender bites down on the run. The Eagles come back later and run the same play, but this time the conflict defender widens with the slide route instead of coming downhill first. This is a look where Jalen should be handing the ball to Swift, but he doesn't, and the ball gets deflected and it turns into an interception. Jalen had issues executing 2 other RPOs later in the game, one resulting in a fumble and one resulting in a sack to start the second half. After that second half sack, the Eagles seemed to shift their game plan. They came out the next drive and called 2 dedicated run plays in a row where Jalen didn't have the option to throw. They still called more RPOs, but outside of the 2 RPOs they threw in the red zone, which came after a heavy dose of run plays, they appeared to be RPOs that were mainly called to give the offense more room to run. More on that later. I don't know if the coaches told Jalen they wanted these RPOs to be handed off, but there were some RPOs where the post-snap read typically would result in a throw, but the ball was still handed off. On top of that, the Eagles called 2 quarterback option plays in the first half. Both times, Jalen kept the ball. They called 0 in the second half. We'll talk more about those plays later as well, but just understand when running RPOs and option plays, Jalen decides who gets the ball. That's a factor in why Swift only got 3 first half carries. The Eagles made a concerted effort to get Swift the ball in the second half. Let's look at the run plays the Eagles did call. In the first half, the Eagles ran the ball 6 times in 2x2 looks, primarily using an offset tight end and running their split zone series. They only ran the ball twice in 3x1 sets. In the second half, the Eagles ran the ball 11 times out of 3x1 looks and only 3 times in a 2x2 look. The Bills had a good game plan to attack the Eagles' split zone runs they like to run from 2x2 looks. What they were doing was rotating to cover 3 post-snap, which happened on 7 of the 9 2x2 runs they had. What the Bills were doing was having the defensive end opposite of the tight end squeeze down the line as the offensive tackle blocked down. The end uses a wrong arm technique, where he takes his outside shoulder and tries to put it inside of the tight end as he's trying to kick him out. What the defensive end wants to do is spill the ball, forcing the run to bounce outside where an unblocked defender is waiting. The Bills switched who that unblocked defender was throughout the game, but their goal was to force the run to spill. Against this look, the Bills had been rotating their defense to the strong side, meaning the safety opposite of the tight end, and to the 2 receiver side was the one rotating down. So in the second half, the Eagles came out in the same personnel grouping, but moved the tight end to the strong side. Teams will have different names for the different type of trips formations, such as trips, tray, trio, or something else, but for our purposes, we'll refer to this formation as tray. They came out in tray and then ran to to the weak side away from the rotation. The Eagles run mid-zone weak with their pin and pull adjustment with Kelce and Dickerson, and they spring a run for 36 yards. Watching the game live, this play felt like it sparked a comeback. On the very next play, the Eagles run the same thing, but it goes for a modest gain. The next drive, the Eagles came out in the same formation again, but the Bills adjusted by rotating the weak safety down to have him ready for the run going to the weak side. They hint pre-snap that this is going to happen as the linebackers are shifted towards the strong side to give the safety space to drop down. They also pinched the weak side defensive end into the B gap. They were likely trying to cause disruption on the blocking assignments with the line movement and gap exchange. This is very similar to what the Jets did against this look after getting burned by it a couple times in their Week 6 matchup. But the Eagles are prepared and call tight zone instead. And Devontae is aware of the safety rotating down, so he gets into the box to block, giving Swift the ability to bounce a run outside. It went for 4 yards, but like I mentioned earlier, staying ahead of the sticks helped out the offense tremendously. In overtime, the Eagles come out and tray again. The Bills are again rotating, but they're trying to disguise which way they are rotating. Watch what happens when Jalen gets into his stance. In tandem, the linebackers shift into their correct pre-snap alignments, so Jalen checks the play at the line. Let's look at the tight view. It's harder to tell from this view as it only starts recording after the linebacker's initial disguise is broken, and number 25 has walked down into his gap to try to redisguise that he's blitzing. But the linebackers were shifted to the offense's left to give the impression that Micah Hyde would be rotating down to fill the B gap. But once Jalen saw the linebackers shift in tandem, he knows the rotation is coming from the other safety, and he checks into a quarterback draw away from the rotation. Similar principle as the other runs we've seen in the second half. On Swift's big run to set up the final play in overtime, the Eagles again run weak out of tray, but the Bills linebackers were tired of getting beat from that look, so they're fast flowing. Swift cuts this run all the way back and gets 16 yards. He probably had some idea he would cut this far back pre-snap based on how tight the backside defensive end is. Let's take a look at a couple more plays. By going to 3x1 looks with detached receiving threats, the Eagles were often able to get the Bills into light boxes. When facing trips looks, where the Eagles had 3 receivers to the trip side, the Bills countered by playing cover 2 trap to that side of the field. The reason being is that the Eagles often use bubble RPOs from that look. By using a cover 2 trap call, they eliminated the bubble out of the play, but this left them light in the box, so the Eagles ran 4 times in this look. They did counter the Bills look with the pass for a touchdown later, but you can check that out in more detail in my short that I released on Monday. Here, the Eagles use a bunch formation, which gets the Bills to go into their box check. Again, that puts them into too high coverage and pulls a linebacker out of the box. The Eagles have a numbers advantage, and good patience by Swift to let his blocks develop gets the offense a solid gain on first down. In all, the Eagles averaged 7.3 yards per carry out of 3x1 looks versus 4.4 out of 2x2 formations. The Eagles averaged more yards from 3x1 looks even when not including the 36-yarder Swift broke off, and that includes a 2x2 run where Gainwell went for 23 yards. Being committed to the run was a factor in the Eagles' comeback, but so was the formations and play calls that they leaned on down the stretch. But none of the plays that the coaches called in the first or second half would have mattered if the Eagles players didn't execute. At the end of the day, it comes down to the players executing the plan on the field. Let's take a look at some of those plays. On Gainwell's 23-yard run, the Eagles ran split zone out of their 2x2 offset tight end formation against a strong rotation cover 3. But guess what? The players executed better. Kelce does a great job taking a brace step, playing with low pad level, and exploding into the shade, allowing Jurgens to drive him back. Stoll does a good job not letting the defensive end spill the ball. As he's working down the line on the kickout block, he's staying tight to the O-line as they work up the field. He's not just running straight down the line. He's not giving the defensive end any space to get inside of him. On Swift's 36-yard run, the call was good, but the play doesn't happen without great blocks from Dickerson and Kelce, but also from Cam Jurgens as he shows his quickness while taking a good angle to climb to the linebacker from the backside, and from Stoll again as he holds the defensive end before working up to the safety folding in. On another play in the first half, the Eagles run outside zone with Swift, but Kelce's playing with a high pad level and gets knocked into the backfield. His assignment closes the gap. On the next play, the Eagles try to run again. They call a quarterback bash, which is pretty much an option play that is reversed, where the running back would take the ball to the read defender side if he crashed down, or Jalen would take the ball to the play side if he doesn't. This is a scenario where Jalen probably should have handed the ball off to Swift, but regardless, Dickerson whiffs on his block. Looking at the wide view, everybody else is blocked up. This is the exact scenario you want when you draw up the play, but one missed block and it doesn't matter. On a different zone read, the Eagles again don't execute well. The defensive end is playing a surf technique, so he can play the running back on the give or Jalen on the keep. Jalen is probably right to keep this, as the D end is very tight pre-snap. If he was wider pre-snap, that would give Swift enough space to run inside. But Stoll and Julio Jones go to block the same guy, and then neither block him. This play ain't gonna work when that happens. They should have been able to widen the play and give Jalen and Alley one-on-one with the safety coming down from the roof. On this RPO, the Eagles have a built-in answer for the cover 3 rotation the Bills were doing, but if Jalen doesn't throw to either option that is open, it doesn't matter. On the fumble, Jalen makes the right decision initially on the RPO and has a hot receiver to throw to, but he gets indecisive and tries to hand the ball off too late. That's on Hurts. There were a number of other plays that went wrong, from bailing out of the pocket with open receivers, to bad blocks and protection that forced Jalen to scramble, to drop passes from backs and wideouts. The Eagles, as a unit, did not play well in the first half, and there's no way around it. But they dug in, never gave up, and ultimately pulled out victorious. The most important factor to the Eagles' offensive success against the Bills was the Eagles players playing to their standard in the second half. Let's hope we see that version of the Eagles offense throughout the rest of the season, because they can't live like that forever.